Okay, I want to talk now quickly about some of the questions that you all asked. And you've now read through the stirring conclusion of the Ramayana. And one thing I like to do in class on the last reading is talk about comic books versus the Ramayana, right? And when you get Rama flying around the globe in this massive battle with Ravenna, and there's shape shifting and huge cosmic battle between these two, um, to me, it calls to mind nothing more than some of the kind of superhero Marvel comics, or DC, Superman, and all the characters that oppose him. And I don't say that as a way to put down the Ramayana, I mean, as a way to bring up comics, right? And to say that oftentimes as cultures, we kind of set out our, morality plays about good and evil and what different things represent through these kind of cosmic battle scenes. And I would invite you to think of parts of the Ramayana as kind of almost comic book ish, or you can imagine it being staged with a huge budget or something like that, right? That there's something very popular about its way of going about and telling this story with these cosmic battles and almost superhero characters. um, let's go through just a few of your questions. Michael, you asked, what does the Ramayana mean? Well, you hear Rama in the name, right? So we've got Rama, and then Ayana can mean a travel or journey. So the journey of Rama. So we're kind of following Rama on this path, and we've already seen how that goes straight through India, right? So this is if you know the places, you're kind of following this path, this story that takes you through India. Amy, you want to know, why does Rama treat Sita like this? Does he think she's been unfaithful? Well, it's hard to know. It is a little bit of a mystery why Sita gets treated this way. He's sent ahead Hanuman, and he's gotten back reports, no doubt, about how good Sita is acting and how she's um, not giving herself over to Ravana. So she is chaste and pure, and he gets her back. But there seems to be something about socially it's unacceptable, or that he's been shamed, and that continues to be a concern of his. And that's probably, that kind of Sita doubt at the end is maybe the hardest thing for us as moderns to read in this story. The kind of doubt about Sita's chastity, which is just based on just her situation of having been kidnapped. Alex, you ask about Rama as the divine God, and this comes up in an interesting passage, page 151. And you're right to bring this up. Right, we've already seen that Rama is an avatar of Vishnu. So that's one really somewhat straightforward way of understanding who Rama is. But here on page 151, it seems to blow that up, right? Um, the supreme God who creates us is without beginning or an end. There is neither birth nor growth nor death for the supreme God. He is the origin of everything, and in him everything is assimilated, and at the end, that God, that supreme God, is yourself, and Sita at your side now is a part of that divinity. Please remember that this is your real identity. So this seems to expand Rama from being simply an avatar of Vishnu, which is no small thing in itself, into being a representative of the supreme God. And I think what we see here, these aren't points of view that are going to be really easy to bring together or harmonize. What we see in a massive sprawling text like the Ramayana is instead argument about just who is Rama. And there's a more kind of limited orthodox view, which he is the avatar of Vishnu. And there's a more Rama-based point of view, which seeks to kind of expand and explode the role of Rama and make him a divine, a manifestation of the divine, the supreme God, and thus kind of overshadowing even Brahma and Vishnu. So there are ways in which kind of gods are raised up or moved down, and a lot of the divisions in Hinduism can be about arguing for, one God over another in terms of emphasis. And so what we see is somewhat different points of view, theological points of view, mapped out in the Ramayana. So I don't think we should ask in these texts for utter consistency so much as we should be interested in the hints we have of different ways that a god can be kind of used and taken over and emphasized. Thomas, I appreciated your question, Thomas Ladora. How do storyteller or leaders today make the Ramayana relatable? And I think that at the tail end of on page 156, you get a sense of this. This is on the very last couple pages of our book. Um, our author says, speaking about storytellers, during his narration, the storyteller would not miss any chance for a contemporary reference. He would compare the pushback Vimana to a modern airliner with the additional capacities that could be piloted by mere thought, that its space could expand to accommodate as many as would want to get into it. One may remember that Rama invited an entire army to travel with him. And so what you get is a hint here at the end that narrators, there's a lot of freedom for narrators. And that's why there's so many versions of the Ramayana out there, is it's being, as you're telling it, it's being updated and comparisons and metaphors are being changed to make this real and approachable to the people who are listening to it. And you also hear in this last page that the Ramayana would be told over the course of 40 days. So just imagine, that's why this is such a sprawling narrative. It wasn't a 2-hour movie like one of our superhero movies, right? It was something for 3 hours a night or longer over the course of 40 days, right? So you have all the time in the world, and that this was something of a lengthy miniseries that people would be engaged with and watching. And that's hard for us to understand because we want our sacred books to kind of fit into nice little time periods, perhaps. But this was a sprawling story over many nights, and that's the way to appreciate it. Why I love this book and why I assign it is because it allows us to kind of get a manageable version of that story, and you can kind of feel how you could expand this to a tremendous degree. Amelia, you have a question also about women, and is the treatment of women still this way? Well, yes, there's certainly very conservative strands of Hinduism and the way women are treated. And I think you'll see that when you watch Sita Sings the Blues. You'll get a sense of some of the debate going back and forth. But here again, I guess what I'd like to leave us with is the Ramayana is not a place for answers so much as it's a sprawling story that allows for lots of different questions and issues to be brought with it. And yes, there's going to be conservative readings of the Ramayana that are possible, but there's also ways to read against the grain, to critique Rama perhaps, or to have a sort of more woman-centric version where you would see it through Sita's eyes, right? It's all about the telling of the story, and that is how religions update themselves and move forward. And whereas if you just got a kind of a list of things you were supposed to believe about men and women, that would be kind of boring, and you'd always be saying the same thing. But these stories allow for groups to maybe move past that. So I'm not going to deny that there are very conservative elements in contemporary Hinduism that where women, where there's not necessarily a real forward interpretation of these things, but it's possible to imagine that way of a new way of thinking as you kind of come to the stories afresh. And that's what your assignment is about, as you're thinking about how you would apply some aspect, some small story of the Ramayana to our current situation. All right, I'll talk to you all tomorrow.